Have you ever driven alone at night on an empty highway? That feeling when your headlights are the only light for miles? Most truckers will tell you the road gets strange after midnight. The darkness plays tricks. Your mind wanders. But some truckers have experienced things that can't be explained by tired eyes or an overactive imagination. Things that made them question reality itself. Tonight, I'm sharing 8 true stories from long-haul truckers who encountered something on the road that changed them forever. These are real accounts from real drivers. So turn off your lights, get comfortable, and whatever you do, don't stop listening until the end. Story number 1. The Repeating Mile. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've been hauling freight for 17 years. I've driven every major highway in the lower 48 states, logged over 2 million miles, and I thought I'd seen everything the road could throw at me. I was wrong. It happened in November 2019 on Interstate 80 through Nevada. I was making a run from Sacramento to Salt Lake City, carrying computer equipment. Nothing unusual. The weather was clear, traffic was light, and I was making good time. I'd left Sacramento at 6 in the evening, planning to drive through the night and arrive by morning. Around 2:30 in the morning, I was somewhere between Winnemucca and Elko. The desert stretched out on both sides of me, dark and endless. My headlights cut through the blackness, and the white lines on the road kept rolling under my wheels. The only sound was the steady hum of my engine and the occasional crackle of the CB radio picking up static. I'd been driving for about 8 hours, but I wasn't tired. I'd slept well before the run, and I had my thermos of coffee keeping me alert. The road was straight, almost hypnotically so, but I was used to that. Nevada highways are like that, long stretches of nothing where you can see for miles. That's when I noticed the mile marker. Mile 229. Nothing special about it, just a green sign reflecting in my headlights as I passed. I glanced at my GPS. Right on track. Everything normal. 5 minutes later, I saw another mile marker. Mile 229. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I'd been driving at a steady 65 miles per hour. I should have covered at least 5 miles by now. I checked my speedometer. Still 65. I looked at my GPS. It showed I was at mile 234, but the sign had clearly said 229. I shook my head, figuring maybe I'd misread it in the dark. Tired eyes playing tricks. I kept driving, watching the road more carefully now. 5 minutes passed. My odometer confirmed I'd traveled another 5 miles. I was watching for the next marker. Mile 229. My heart skipped. That wasn't possible. I just passed that marker 10 minutes ago. I grabbed my CB radio. Breaker, breaker. Anyone out there on I-80 eastbound near mile marker 229? Static. Nothing but empty static. I tried my cell phone. No signal. That wasn't unusual in rural Nevada, but it added to the creeping unease in my gut. I kept driving, my eyes fixed on the road ahead, watching for the next marker. Mile 229. The coffee in my stomach turned to ice. I'd been driving for 15 minutes since the first time I saw that marker. I should be at mile 244 by now, but somehow I was back at 229. I checked everything. My speedometer was working. My GPS was functioning, though it now showed my location as uncertain. My fuel gauge had dropped appropriately for the distance I'd driven. Everything said I was moving forward, covering ground, eating up miles. But the markers said otherwise. Mile 229. Again. Mile 229. Again. Mile 229. Again. I lost count of how many times I passed that marker. 10 times? 20? The numbers on my dashboard kept changing. My trip odometer kept climbing, but that green sign kept appearing in my headlights every 5 minutes like a recurring nightmare. The desert around me looked exactly the same each time. Same rocky outcroppings on the right. Same flat expanse on the left. Same slight curve in the road about a quarter mile past the marker. It wasn't just that the mile markers were wrong. I was literally driving the same stretch of highway over and over. I tried slowing down. The marker appeared 5 minutes later. I tried speeding up. The marker appeared 5 minutes later. I tried pulling over and waiting. After 10 minutes of sitting on the shoulder with my hazards on, I started driving again. 5 minutes later, mile 229. The worst part wasn't the impossibility of it. The worst part was the silence. My CB radio had gone completely dead. Not even static anymore. My phone showed no signal, no bars, not even the emergency call option. And I hadn't seen another vehicle since this started. Not one car, not one truck. The highway was utterly deserted. I'd been trapped in this loop for over 2 hours when I started to panic. Really panic. My fuel gauge was dropping. I'd burned through nearly a quarter tank going nowhere. What would happen when I ran out of gas? Would I be stuck here forever, starving to death on an endless loop of highway that led nowhere? That's when I saw her. A woman, standing on the shoulder of the road just before the mile marker. She wore a white dress that seemed to glow in my headlights, and her long dark hair hung loose around her shoulders. She wasn't moving, just standing there, watching my truck approach. I should have been relieved to see another person. Instead, every instinct in my body screamed at me to look away, to not acknowledge her presence. But I couldn't help it. As I got closer, my headlights lit her up fully. She had no face. Where her features should have been, there was just smooth, blank skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just nothing. And she was waving at me. Not frantically, not desperately. Just a slow, deliberate wave, like she was greeting an old friend. I mashed the accelerator, my truck surging forward. I flew past her, past the mile marker, my speedometer climbing to 80, 85, 90. The desert blurred around me. I didn't care about speed limits or safety. I just needed to get away from her, away from this place. 5 minutes later, mile 229. She was there again. Same spot, same wave, same blank face. I kept my eyes on the road this time, refusing to look at her as I passed. But I could see her in my side mirror, standing motionless as I drove away. And in the mirror, I could swear she turned her head to follow my truck, tracking my movement despite having no eyes. This happened 7 more times. 7 more times I passed that faceless woman, and each time she was a little closer to the road. The first time she'd been about 10 feet from the shoulder. The second time, 5 feet. The third time, she was standing right on the white line. The fourth time, she was in the road. I swerved around her, my trailer swinging wide, tires squealing. In my mirror, I watched her turn and start walking. Not after me, the same direction I was going. The fifth time I came around, she was further down the road, still walking. The sixth time, further still. The seventh time, she was standing directly in the middle of my lane, about 100 yards past the mile marker. And this time, she wasn't just standing. She was running toward my truck. I slammed on my brakes, but she was impossibly fast. In seconds, she'd covered the distance and was right in front of my hood. I could see her clearly in the headlights. The white dress, the dark hair, the terrible blank face. And then she pressed her hands against my windshield. I screamed, couldn't help it. Her palms were flat against the glass, and where she touched, the glass frosted over, ice crystals spreading from her fingertips. The temperature in my cab plummeted. I could see my breath. Frost formed on the inside of my windows. She leaned closer, that featureless face inches from mine with only the windshield between us. And even though she had no mouth, I heard her voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing inside my skull. "You're lost," she said. "You've always been lost. Drive faster." Then she was gone. Not running away, not walking. Just gone like she'd never been there. The frost on my windshield melted instantly, and the cab warmed back up to normal temperature. I sat there shaking, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Every fiber of my being told me not to drive forward, not to keep going. But what choice did I have? I couldn't sit here forever. I pressed the accelerator. I drove through the darkness, past the mile marker 229, past the spot where she'd been standing. I watched my odometer. 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, and then I saw lights ahead. Not headlights, street lights, and buildings, and a sign that said, "Welcome to Elko." I'd broken free. I pulled into the first truck stop I saw and sat in the parking lot for 3 hours, waiting for sunrise. I checked my trip log. From the time I'd first seen that mile marker until I reached Elko, nearly 4 hours had passed. But according to my GPS history, I'd only traveled 23 miles. I'd lost almost 4 hours to that loop. 4 hours of my life just gone. Spent driving the same stretch of road over and over with a faceless woman who shouldn't exist. I reported it to the Nevada Highway Patrol the next morning. The officer listened politely, took notes, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He suggested I might have fallen asleep at the wheel, experienced a vivid dream. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. I still drive I-80 through Nevada sometimes. I have to for work, but I always make sure to pass through that section during daylight, and I never drive it alone. And whenever I see mile marker 229, my hands start shaking and my mouth goes dry, because I know she's still out there, waiting for the next driver who gets lost, waiting to trap them in that endless loop. And I wonder how many truckers have disappeared on that stretch of highway, their trucks never found, their fate never known. I wonder if some of them are still there, still driving, still passing mile marker 229 over and over, forever. Story number 2. The truck stop that wasn't there. I'm Sarah Chun, and I've been driving trucks for 12 years. I run a route from Chicago to Denver, mostly food service deliveries to restaurants and grocery stores. It's good work, steady pay, and I enjoy the solitude of the road. But after what happened last March, I seriously considered quitting. It was a Tuesday night, around 11 p.m., and I was somewhere in western Nebraska on Highway 80. I'd been driving since 6 that morning with only a couple of short breaks, and I was exhausted. My eyes were starting to burn, and I knew I needed to stop for the night. I had maybe 2 more hours until I hit my daily driving limit anyway, so I figured I'd find a truck stop and get some sleep. The problem was, this stretch of Nebraska is pretty empty. Truck stops can be 50 miles apart or more. I checked my GPS for the nearest one. It showed a place called Red River Travel Plaza, about 15 miles ahead. I'd never stopped there before, but the GPS said it had fuel, food, and parking. Perfect. 15 miles later, I saw the sign, Red River Travel Plaza, next exit. The sign looked old, the paint faded and peeling, but truck stop signs often look like that in rural areas. I took the exit and followed a 2-lane road for about a mile until I saw the lights. The travel plaza was bigger than I expected for such a remote location. 2 rows of fuel pumps with overhead lights, a decent-sized building that looked like it housed a restaurant and convenience store, and a large parking lot with spaces for maybe 30 trucks. A few rigs were already parked there, their running lights glowing in the darkness. I pulled up to a diesel pump and climbed out. The air was cold, probably in the 30s, and a light wind carried the smell of fuel and oil. Normal truck stop smells. Nothing seemed unusual. The pump was old-fashioned, the kind where you have to prepay inside. I locked my truck and walked toward the building. As I got closer, I noticed how quiet it was. No sounds of engines idling, no voices, no music from the restaurant. Just silence and the wind. The glass door had a sign that said, "Open 24 hours" in red letters. I pulled it open and stepped inside. The interior was weirdly outdated. The floor was covered in dingy yellow linoleum, scuffed and cracked. The walls were painted a pale green that might have looked nice in the 1970s, but now just looked sickly. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, some of them flickering. Behind the counter stood a man in a faded blue uniform, his face weathered and expressionless. "Evening," I said. "Pump 4, diesel. $50. He didn't respond, just took my credit card and ran it through an ancient card reader. The receipt printer made a grinding noise as it churned out my receipt. He handed it to me without making eye contact. "Thanks," I said. "Is the restaurant still open?" He pointed toward a door at the back of the store. Through its window, I could see tables and chairs, dimly lit. I grabbed some snacks from the shelves, more out of habit than hunger. The selection was weird. Brands I didn't recognize, packaged in outdated designs. Everything looked old, like it had been sitting on these shelves for decades. I put the stuff back and headed for the restaurant. The restaurant was small, maybe 10 tables, all empty. The decor was the same dated style as the store, all brown paneling and orange vinyl booths. Behind a counter, a waitress stood motionless, staring at nothing. She was maybe 60 years old, wearing a pink uniform that had gone gray from too many washings. "Can I get some coffee?" I asked. She nodded and poured a cup from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there for hours. The coffee was black and thick, almost syrupy. I took a sip and immediately regretted it. Tasted burnt and bitter and wrong. I was about to ask for some cream when I noticed the menu on the table. The prices threw me off. Coffee, 50 cents. Hamburger, $1.25. Slice of pie, 75 cents. These were prices from 40 years ago. "Excuse me," I said to the waitress. "These prices, are they current?" She stared at me for a long moment, her face completely blank. Then she said, "Menu hasn't changed." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. I put the coffee down and stood up. "Actually, I need to get back to my truck." "How much for the coffee?" 50 cents. I pulled out $1 and put it on the counter. She didn't move to take it, just kept staring at me with those dead eyes. I backed toward the door, suddenly desperate to get out of that restaurant. As I reached for the handle, I glanced back. The waitress was still standing in the exact same position, watching me. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. I practically ran back through the convenience store. The man behind the counter was gone. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. The store was empty. I hurried outside and headed for my truck. That's when I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The other trucks in the parking lot, the ones I'd seen when I arrived, they all looked old. Really old. Models from the 70s and 80s, some even older. Rusted, faded paint, outdated designs. And none of them were running. No idling engines, no lights inside the cabs. They looked abandoned. I walked closer to the nearest one, a faded red Peterbilt. The windows were covered in a thick layer of dust. I wiped it away and looked inside. The cab was empty, but on the dashboard was a newspaper. I could just make out the date in the dim light, July 16th, 1979. My heart was pounding now. I ran to my truck, jumped in, and started the engine. I didn't bother fueling up. I just wanted to get out of there. As I pulled away from the pump, my headlights swept across the parking lot, and I saw them. People. standing next to each of those old trucks. They'd appeared out of nowhere. Drivers in outdated clothes, staring at me with the same blank expressions as the clerk and the waitress. There must have been 20 of them, all standing perfectly still, all watching me leave. I hit the gas and tore out of that parking lot. My truck bounced over the uneven pavement as I raced back toward the exit. In my mirrors, I could see those people still standing there, not moving, just watching until my taillights disappeared. I drove back to the highway entrance, my hands shaking on the wheel. When I merged back onto Highway 80, I immediately checked my GPS for the next truck stop. According to the map, the nearest one was 63 miles ahead. There was no Red River Travel Plaza listed anywhere. I checked the map history. Nothing. As far as my GPS was concerned, that place didn't exist. But I'd been there. I'd walked through that store, sat in that restaurant, seen those abandoned trucks. I didn't stop again until I reached Denver. And when I got there, I looked up the Red River Travel Plaza online. I found one mention of it in an old newspaper article from 1982. A truck stop by that name had existed on Highway 80 in Nebraska. It had closed in 1979 after a gas leak had killed 3 people: a clerk, a waitress, and a trucker who'd stopped for coffee. The building had been torn down shortly after. I'd stopped at a truck stop that had been gone for over 40 years. I'd walked through a building that didn't exist anymore. I'd seen the ghosts of people who'd died decades ago. I still drive the Chicago to Denver route, but I never take that exit anymore. Sometimes, late at night when I'm on that stretch of Highway 80, I see the sign, Red River Travel Plaza, next exit. And each time I see it, there are more trucks in that parking lot, more drivers standing in the darkness, more souls trapped in that place between life and death, forever waiting for something that will never come. And I know that if I ever stop there again, I might not leave. I might become one of them, standing in that parking lot, watching new drivers arrive, forever stuck in a truck stop that shouldn't exist. Story number 3. The passenger who wasn't human. My name is Marcus Webb, and I've been hauling freight for 21 years. I run solo mostly, long-distance routes across the western states. I've picked up hitchhikers before, against company policy, but it's hard to say no to someone stranded on a lonely highway. What happened last August taught me why that policy exists. I was heading south on Highway 93 through Arizona, somewhere between Kingman and Phoenix. It was late afternoon, probably around 5:30, and the desert sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. The road was mostly empty, just me and the endless stretch of asphalt cutting through the brown landscape. That's when I saw him, a man standing on the shoulder about half a mile ahead, thumb out in the universal hitchhiker gesture. As I got closer, I could see he was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing jeans and a blue jacket. He had a backpack at his feet and a desperate look on his face. I should have driven past. Company rules are clear, but something made me pull over. Maybe it was the isolation of the area, the lack of other traffic. Nobody should be stranded out here. I rolled down my window as he jogged up to the truck. "Need a lift?" "God, yes," he said, relief flooding his face. "My car broke down about 10 miles back. I've been walking for 2 hours. Phone's dead, no signal anyway. You're the first truck that stopped. Where you headed?" "Phoenix. I can get a bus from there." "All right, hop in." He grabbed his backpack and climbed into the passenger seat. Up close, he looked tired and sunburned, which made sense if he'd been walking in the Arizona heat. But otherwise, he seemed normal. Clean-cut, polite, grateful. "I'm Marcus," I said, pulling back onto the highway. "Danny," he replied. "Thanks for stopping, man. I was starting to think I'd be out here all night." We drove in silence for a few minutes. He stared out the window at the desert, and I focused on the road. The sun was getting lower, painting the sky orange and pink. "So, what do you haul?" Danny asked eventually. "Whatever needs hauling. This load is furniture, headed to a warehouse in Phoenix." "Been doing this long?" 21 years. "You must have seen some weird stuff out here. Driving at night through these empty places." Something about the way he said it made me glance at him. He was still looking out the window, but there was a strange intensity to his posture. "Weird how?" I asked. "I don't know. Strange people, strange places, things that don't make sense. Sometimes," I admitted, "the road gets odd after midnight. Your mind plays tricks when you're tired." "Does it?" He turned to look at me, and for just a moment, I could have sworn his eyes reflected the setting sun like an animal's eyes caught in headlights. But then he blinked, and they were normal human eyes again. "Or do you see things that are actually there?" I didn't answer. There was something about this conversation that was starting to make me uncomfortable. We drove on as the sun disappeared and darkness fell over the desert. I turned on my headlights, and the road ahead became a tunnel of light in the surrounding blackness. Danny went quiet again, just staring out at the night. About 20 miles later, I noticed something weird. Danny wasn't moving at all. His chest wasn't rising and falling like he was breathing. He was just sitting there, perfectly still like a statue. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't respond immediately. Then, slowly, his head turned toward me. The movement was wrong, too smooth, like his neck was on ball bearings. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice sounded different, flatter. "Are you okay, Marcus?" "Yeah, why?" "Your heart rate just increased, from 72 beats per minute to 95. "Why is that?" My hands tightened on the wheel. "How could you possibly know my heart rate?" "I can hear it. I can hear everything about you. Your pulse, your breathing, the blood moving through your veins, the electrical impulses in your brain. You're very loud, Marcus. All humans are." I felt ice water flood my veins. "What the hell are you?" Danny smiled, and his teeth were too white, too perfect, too many. "I'm what you invited into your truck when you stopped." I wanted to pull over to kick him out, but we were doing 65 on a dark highway in the middle of nowhere. And something told me that stopping would be the worst thing I could do. "I'm not going to hurt you," Danny said, as if reading my thoughts. "I'm just hitching a ride. That's all. You help me get to Phoenix, I leave, you never see me again. Simple." "What are you?" I repeated. "Does it matter? You have words for things like me. Demon, spirit, alien, monster. None of them are accurate, but you can pick whichever makes you feel better." I tried to keep my breathing steady. "And if I refuse to take you to Phoenix, then I'll have to take the truck myself. And I've never driven one of these before, so it probably wouldn't end well. For you especially." We drove on. I didn't know what else to do. Every few minutes, I'd glance at him, and each time he looked less human. His skin seemed too smooth, like plastic. His movements were mechanical, precise in a way that human movement never is. And his eyes, God, his eyes were completely black now. No whites, no iris, just solid black orbs. "Why Phoenix?" I managed to ask. "There's someone there I need to see. Someone who made me a promise a long time ago and didn't keep it." "What kind of promise?" "The kind you don't break." He turned those black eyes on me. "Do you keep your promises, Marcus?" "I try to." "Good, because you're going to make me a promise tonight. When we get to Phoenix, when I leave this truck, you're going to forget you ever saw me. You're going to forget this conversation. You're going to remember picking up a normal hitchhiker who said thank you and disappeared into the city. That's all. And if I don't forget, then I'll have to make sure you do. Brains are fragile things, Marcus. So easy to break. So easy to rewire. I'd rather not do that. It's messy and it hurts. For you, I don't feel pain." The miles crawled by. I'd never been so aware of distance before, Never wanted a destination to arrive faster. Every minute in that cab with that thing felt like an hour. About an hour outside Phoenix, Danny spoke again. "You're thinking about going to the police after you drop me off. About telling someone what happened. Can you read my mind?" "I can read your physiology. Elevated stress hormones. Increased prefrontal cortex activity. You're planning something. Don't. No one would believe you, and it would annoy me. You don't want to annoy me, Marcus. What happens if I do?" He reached out and put his hand on my arm. His skin was cold, far colder than it should be. "I know where you live. 2847 Maple Street, apartment 4B, Kansas City, Missouri. I know you have a daughter named Rebecca. She's 16, goes to Central High School, walks home alone most days. I know you have an ex-wife named Patricia who lives on the other side of town. I know everything about you, Marcus. Everything. So if you annoy me, I'll annoy you back. Do we understand each other?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Good." When we finally reached Phoenix, I pulled into the first truck stop I saw. Danny grabbed his backpack and opened the door. "Thanks for the ride," he said, his voice almost normal again. Almost. "Remember our deal. Forget you saw me. Forget what I am. Just be grateful you're still alive and whole." He climbed down and walked away into the darkness of the parking lot. I watched him in my mirrors until he disappeared behind the building. Then I sat there for 3 hours, shaking, unable to move or think clearly. Eventually, I called my dispatcher and told him I was sick, that I needed to take a few days off. He wasn't happy, but he approved it. I drove home to Kansas City the next day, and every mile of that drive, I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see Danny in the passenger seat again. Those black eyes staring at me. That was 6 months ago. I haven't picked up a hitchhiker since. I never will again. And sometimes, late at night, I'll be driving through a dark stretch of highway and I'll see someone on the shoulder, thumb out, desperate for a ride. And I'll see that their shadow doesn't match their body, or their eyes reflect the light wrong, or they're too still, not breathing, not quite human. And I drive past as fast as I can, knowing that whatever I picked up on Highway 93 that August evening, there are more of them out there, waiting, watching, looking for the next driver foolish enough to stop. I kept my promise. I haven't told the police. I haven't told anyone the full truth. But I needed to tell someone, even if it's anonymous, because other drivers need to know. If you see someone stranded on a lonely highway, especially after dark, especially in the middle of nowhere, don't stop. Whatever you think you're seeing, whatever humanitarian impulse you feel, don't stop. Because it might not be human. And once you let it into your truck, once you make that choice, you belong to it. You're part of its world now, and you'll never be the same. Story number 4. The CB radio broadcast from nowhere. I'm Lisa Martinez, and I've been driving trucks for 9 years. I mostly run night shifts because the pay is better and there's less traffic. But after what happened last October, I've been thinking about switching to day runs. Started like any normal night. I was hauling electronics from Dallas to Memphis, running on I-30 through Arkansas. The time was around 3 in the morning, that dead period when the world feels like it's sleeping and you're the only person awake. My CB radio was on, tuned to channel 19 like always, but it was quiet. Just the occasional burst of static. I was about an hour outside of Little Rock when the broadcast started. First, it was just noise. A weird scratching sound, like someone dragging metal across concrete. Then it cleared up, and I heard a voice. Male, middle-aged, stressed. "This is Robert Clay, driver number 447, hauling for Midwest Transport. I'm on Highway 70, somewhere in Kansas. I don't know where exactly. If anyone can hear this, I need help. Please, something's wrong with the road." I picked up my radio. "Breaker 19, this is Lisa Martinez. Copy you, Robert. What's your 20? What's the problem?" No response. His broadcast continued like he couldn't hear me. "The exits are wrong. I keep passing the same ones over and over. McPherson, Lindsborg, McPherson, Lindsborg. They shouldn't repeat. Roads don't work like that. And there's no other traffic. No cars, no trucks. Just me. I've been driving for 6 hours and I haven't seen another vehicle. I tried again. Robert, this is Lisa on Channel 19. Can you hear me? Still nothing. He kept talking, his voice getting more panicked. My fuel is getting low. GPS says I've only moved 12 miles in 6 hours, but my odometer says I've covered 350 miles. That's not possible. That can't be possible. And it's still dark. It should be sunrise by now, but it's still dark. Other voices started joining the channel. Truckers from all over, asking what was going on, trying to reach Robert, but he couldn't hear any of us. His broadcast continued, uninterrupted. Wait, I see something. Lights ahead. Looks like a town. Thank God. I'm going to stop and get help. There was silence for about 30 seconds. Then Robert's voice came back, but it was different now. Quieter. Afraid. This isn't a town. The buildings are wrong. They're too tall, too narrow. And the windows are all dark. No lights inside. No signs. No cars parked on the street. Nothing's moving. But I can see shapes inside the buildings. Standing at the windows. Watching me. Robert, get out of there, I said into my radio, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. Drive away. Don't stop. I'm going to try to drive through. Maybe there's a way out on the other side. Another pause. Then a sound came through the radio that made my blood turn to ice. Screaming. Robert Clay was screaming, and behind his screams were other sounds. Scraping, tearing, and something else. Something that sounded like voices but distorted, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Then silence. Complete silence. The CB radio went dead. Not just Robert's broadcast, but everything. The static was gone. It was like every radio in the country had shut off simultaneously. I drove in that eerie silence for 10 minutes before the normal CB chatter resumed. Truckers talking about weather, traffic, truck stops. Like nothing had happened. I got on the radio. Did anyone else hear that broadcast? The driver in Kansas. A few voices responded. Yes, they heard it. A guy named Robert sounded like he was in trouble. But when I asked what they heard specifically, their answers were vague. They remembered a distressed driver, but not the details. Not the repeating exits. Not the strange town. Not the screaming. It was like their memories had been wiped clean, leaving only a faint impression. When I stopped for fuel in Little Rock, I looked up Robert Clay and Midwest Transport online. I found a news article from 2 weeks earlier. Robert Clay, 43, truck driver for Midwest Transport, had disappeared while making a run through Kansas. His truck had been found abandoned on Highway 70 near McPherson. The cab was empty. No signs of struggle. No indication where the driver had gone. He'd simply vanished. The article was dated 13 days before the broadcast I'd heard. I'd listened to a dead man calling for help on a CB radio. Or maybe I'd heard his last moments, somehow recorded and replaying over and over. Or maybe, in whatever place he'd ended up, he was still driving, still trapped on that endless highway, still trying to call for help that would never come. I reported it to the police. They took my statement, but I could see they didn't believe me. Probably thought I'd fallen asleep at the wheel and dreamed the whole thing. But I know what I heard, and I wasn't the only one. In the weeks after, I found forum posts from other truckers who'd heard broadcasts like mine. Different drivers, different locations, but always the same pattern. Someone lost on an impossible road, trapped in a place that shouldn't exist, calling for help that never arrives. Some of those broadcasts are from drivers who disappeared decades ago. I found one post from a trucker who'd heard a broadcast from his father, who'd vanished in 1987. The voice was unmistakable, the details matched. But his father had been dead, or at least gone, for over 30 years. They're still out there, somewhere, driving roads that don't appear on any map, trapped in spaces between here and nowhere. And sometimes, late at night when the world is quiet and the frequencies are clear, their voices break through, calling for help, begging for rescue, warning others not to make the same mistakes they made. I still hear them sometimes. I'll be driving through the darkness, and my CB radio will crackle to life with a voice that shouldn't exist. A driver who disappeared years ago, or maybe just yesterday, screaming about roads that repeat, towns that aren't real, and things that watch from dark windows. And every time I hear one of those broadcasts, I wonder what mistake they made. What wrong turn did they take? What road did they follow that led them to that place? Because if it could happen to them, it could happen to me. One wrong exit, one moment of inattention, one decision that seems normal but isn't. And then I'd be the one broadcasting on Channel 19, begging for help that would never come, heard by drivers who couldn't reach me, trapped forever on a highway that leads nowhere. So now I'm extra careful about the roads I take. I stick to major highways. I avoid unfamiliar shortcuts. I never take an exit I don't recognize, no matter how much time it might save. Because out there in the darkness, there are roads that exist just to trap the unwary. Roads that hungry for drivers. And once they have you, they never let go. The CB radio crackles sometimes when I'm alone. I hear voices in the static. Voices calling my name, asking me to join them, promising that the road ahead is safe, that the exit is just a shortcut. But I know better now. I'll never answer those voices. I'll never take those exits. Because I've heard what happens to drivers who do. And I'm not ready to join them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Story number 5. The delivery to a place that doesn't exist. My name is Tom Brennan, and I've been in the trucking business for 14 years. I work for a mid-sized logistics company, usually hauling freight to distribution centers and warehouses. Last July, I got assigned a delivery that changed everything. The dispatcher called me on a Saturday morning. "Tom, I've got a rush job for you. Good money. Need it delivered by Monday morning." Where to? Small town called Ashmont, about 200 miles north of Spokane. I pulled up my GPS. No town called Ashmont appeared. "You sure about that location?" "Yeah, I've got the coordinates right here." She read them off. "Client says GPS won't find it by name. It's pretty remote. Just use the coordinates." The pay was double my usual rate, so I agreed. I loaded up the truck, a full trailer of industrial equipment, and headed north from Seattle. The drive to Spokane was normal. But once I passed Spokane and started following the coordinates deeper into Washington's rural areas, things got strange. The roads became smaller, less maintained. Two-lane highways turned into single-lane roads. Pavement gave way to gravel. Trees pressed in on both sides. Thick pine forests that blocked out most of the light even though it was mid-afternoon. My GPS kept recalculating. In half a mile, turn left. But there'd be no left turn, just unbroken forest. I keep driving and the GPS would recalculate again. In 200 feet, turn right. Again, no turn. After 2 hours of this, I was about to give up and call the dispatcher when I saw it. A gap in the trees. A narrow dirt road, barely wide enough for my truck. No sign, no marker. Just an opening. My GPS said, "Turn right." I took the turn. The dirt road wound through the forest, climbing into hills. Tree branches scraped against my trailer. Several times I thought I'd gotten stuck, but I managed to keep pushing forward. Then I came around a bend and saw the town. Ashmont looked like something from 70 years ago. Main Street lined with old-fashioned storefronts. Gas station with vintage pumps. A diner with a neon sign that said, "Open." A few houses beyond the main drag, all in that post-World War II style. But something was off. The town was too clean. The paint on the buildings looked fresh. The street was free of potholes. The cars parked along the road were all from the 1940s and 50s, but they looked brand new. And there were no people. I rolled down my window. No sounds of engines, voices, activity. Just silence. Even the birds were quiet. I checked the delivery address on my paperwork. 145 Industrial Way. I drove slowly through town, looking for street signs. Found Industrial Way, a short road that led to a large warehouse on the edge of town. The warehouse was exactly like the others I delivered to all the time. Modern metal building, loading docks, the whole setup. Completely out of place in this vintage town. I backed up to the loading dock and got out. The warehouse door was open. Inside, I could see pallets and forklifts, but no people. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed in the empty space. No response. I checked my phone. No signal. Not even emergency service. It was like I'd driven out of coverage completely. I stood there for a few minutes, unsure what to do. The delivery instructions said to unload at Dock 3 and leave the paperwork in the office. But doing that in a completely empty facility seemed wrong. That's when I noticed the office door was ajar. Through the gap, I could see lights on inside. Maybe someone was in there. I walked across the warehouse floor, my footsteps echoing loudly. The office door swung open at my touch. The office was furnished but empty. Desk, computer, filing cabinets, a coffee maker with fresh coffee in the pot. Steam rising from it, like someone had just brewed it and stepped away. On the desk was a clipboard with my delivery order already filled out. Signed and dated, today's date, but the signature was illegible, just a scrawled line. Next to the clipboard was a note. Written in neat handwriting, it said, "Unload at Dock 3. Leave paperwork here. Do not explore the town. Do not stay after dark. Leave before 6 p.m. I checked my watch. 4:47 p.m. I had just over an hour. I should have left immediately, driven out of there and told my dispatcher the delivery was impossible. But I needed to unload the cargo, needed that paycheck. So I did what the note said. Took me 40 minutes to unload everything. The whole time, I kept looking around, expecting to see someone, hear something, but the warehouse stayed empty. The town stayed silent. When I finished, I went back to the office, left the paperwork on the desk, and hurried back to my truck. It was 5:32 p.m., plenty of time to get out before 6. But as I drove back through town, I saw something that made me stop. The diner. Through its windows, I could see people inside, sitting at the counter at booths, eating, talking, moving, alive. But they weren't quite right. Their movements were too smooth, too synchronized, like they were actors following a script. And their clothes were all from the 1950s. Every single person dressed like they'd stepped out of an old photograph. One of them turned to look at me through the window, a man in a gray suit and fedora. He smiled and waved, gesturing for me to come inside. Every instinct I had screamed at me to drive away, but I was frozen, staring at that man's smile. It was too wide, showing too many teeth. Then I saw my watch. 5:58 p.m., 2 minutes to 6. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. My truck lurched forward, tires kicking up dirt. In my rearview mirror, I saw them. All the people from the diner now standing in the street. Dozens of them, all watching me leave, all with those two wide smiles. I raced back through town toward the dirt road. The sun was setting fast, shadows stretching across the street. And as the darkness grew, the people multiplied. More of them appearing from the buildings, from between houses. All standing, all watching, all smiling. I reached the dirt road just as my watch hit 6 p.m. Behind me, I heard something. A sound like wind, but not wind. Like thousands of voices whispering at once. And underneath that, something else. Footsteps. Running. I didn't look back. I just drove, pushing my truck as fast as I dared on that narrow dirt road. Branches whipped against my trailer. Something scraped the roof of my cab. I kept going. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, I burst out of the forest onto the paved road. Back to civilization. Back to normal. I pulled over and sat there shaking for 20 minutes. When I finally calmed down enough to check my phone, I had signal again, and a voicemail from my dispatcher, left 3 hours earlier. Tom, scratched that delivery to Ashmont. Client called and said they don't need it anymore. Just bring the load back. Sorry for the confusion, but I'd already delivered it. The paperwork was signed. The cargo was gone. I drove back to Seattle and went straight to the warehouse. The cargo I'd supposedly delivered was still there. Every single piece of it. Nothing had been unloaded, but I knew I'd unloaded it. I'd spent 40 minutes moving those pallets. I had the clipboard with the signed paperwork. Except when I looked in my truck, the clipboard was gone, and my clothes were clean. No dirt, no dust, like I hadn't spent 2 hours driving on dirt roads through the forest. I told my dispatcher what happened. She looked at me like I was crazy. According to the GPS log from my truck, I'd driven north from Spokane, then stopped on the side of the road for 3 hours. No detours, no dirt roads, just parked. I looked up Ashmont, Washington online. No town by that name exists. Never has. The coordinates the dispatcher had given me point to empty forest. No roads, no buildings, nothing. But I was there. I saw that town. I delivered that cargo. I saw those people with their wrong smiles. And sometimes, late at night, I'll be driving through Washington and I'll see it. Just for a second. A gap in the trees. A dirt road leading into darkness. And I'll hear it too. That sound like thousands of whispers, calling my name, inviting me back. Because whatever Ashmont is, wherever it exists, it knows me now. And it's waiting for me to return. Waiting for me to miss that 6 p.m. deadline. Waiting to add me to its collection of smiling people who aren't quite right. I refuse every delivery north of Spokane now, no matter the pay. Because I know if I go back to that area, if I see that gap in the trees again, I won't be able to resist. I'll take that turn. I'll drive down that dirt road. And next time, I won't leave before 6 p.m. Next time, I'll stay. I'll become one of them. One of the smiling people in the town that doesn't exist. Forever. Story number 6. The truck that followed me for 600 miles. I'm Kevin Park, and I've been driving trucks for 16 years. I work as an independent contractor, taking whatever jobs pay well. Last September, I picked up a load in Portland that was heading to Salt Lake City. Straightforward route, good money, no red flags. I left Portland at midnight, planning to drive through the night and arrive by mid-afternoon the next day. The first few hours were normal. Light traffic on I-84, clear weather, good road conditions. I made excellent time. Around 3 in the morning, somewhere near Pendleton, Oregon, I noticed a truck behind me. A black Peterbilt, no company markings, just plain black. It had been there for maybe 20 minutes, keeping pace about a quarter mile back. I didn't think much of it at first. Truckers often end up driving together for long stretches, matching speeds, keeping consistent distances. It's almost comforting, knowing there's another driver out there in the darkness with you. But after an hour, the truck was still there. Same distance, same position. I sped up to 75. The truck sped up. I slowed to 60. The truck slowed down. Whatever I did, it matched me exactly. I tried the CB radio. Hey, black Peterbilt behind me on I-84. You reading me? No response. Another hour passed. The truck stayed behind me, never getting closer, never falling back. Just maintaining that exact quarter-mile distance. I pulled off at a rest stop near Baker City. The truck didn't follow. I watched it pass the exit, continuing east on the highway. Relief washed over me. Just paranoia. Just a coincidence. I used the bathroom, grabbed some coffee from a vending machine, checked my load. Everything was fine. I got back on the highway 20 minutes later. 5 miles down the road, the black Peterbilt was behind me again. My hands started shaking on the wheel. That wasn't possible. It should have been 30 miles ahead by now. But there it was, same distance, same position. Like it had been waiting for me to catch up. I tried the radio again. Black Peterbilt, this is the semi you've been following. What's your deal, man? Why you tailing me? Nothing. Not even static. Just silence. The sun came up as I crossed into Idaho. In the daylight, I could see the black truck more clearly. Or rather, I couldn't see it clearly. Something about it was wrong. The details were fuzzy, like it was slightly out of focus. I couldn't make out the license plate, couldn't see the driver through the windshield. Just a black shape following me. I stopped for fuel in Boise. This time I watched carefully as the black truck passed. I noted the time, waited 30 minutes, then got back on the highway. The truck was waiting on the shoulder 2 miles ahead. As I approached, it pulled onto the highway in front of me. Now it was leading instead of following. Same distance, just reversed. And somehow that was worse. I tried to pass it, pulled into the left lane, accelerated. The truck accelerated too, matching my speed perfectly. I couldn't get closer. I dropped back to get behind it again, thinking maybe I could take a different route. But when I slowed down, it slowed down. When I changed lanes, it changed lanes. It was leading me now, controlling my route, and I couldn't break away. This continued for 300 more miles. Through Idaho into Utah. The black truck leading, me following. Both of us locked in this bizarre procession. I tried everything. Sudden lane changes, rapid acceleration, pulling off at random exits. Nothing worked. The truck was always there, always the same distance away. Other vehicles passed us, regular traffic going about their business. None of them seemed to see the black truck as unusual. Or maybe they couldn't see it at all. Maybe it was only visible to me. By the time I reached Salt Lake City, I was exhausted and terrified. The black truck led me right to my delivery location, then disappeared. Just vanished in the middle of traffic, like it had never existed. I delivered my load and immediately checked into a motel. I needed sleep, needed to process what had happened. But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black truck, following me, leading me, always there. I stayed in Salt Lake City for 3 days, too afraid to drive. Finally, I had to take another job. I needed the money. The load was heading back to Portland, a complete circuit. I left Salt Lake City at dawn, telling myself the black truck had been a hallucination. Exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. It wouldn't happen again. It was waiting for me at the city limits. This time it was beside me, driving in the next lane, matching my speed exactly. I could see it clearly in my peripheral vision, but when I turned to look directly at it, the details went fuzzy again. I tried to pull over. My steering wheel wouldn't turn. The pedals wouldn't respond. My truck kept driving itself, staying parallel to the black Peterbilt. Both of us locked together on the highway. This lasted for 2 hours. I wasn't in control of my truck anymore. It was driving itself or being driven by something else. All I could do was sit there, hands on a wheel that I couldn't turn, watching the road ahead. Finally, near Twin Falls, Idaho, the black truck pulled away. My truck controls responded again. I immediately pulled into a rest area and sat there hyperventilating. That's when I noticed the message on my windshield, written in what looked like frost, even though it was September and warm. 3 words, "You're chosen now." I grabbed a rag and wiped it away, but it wouldn't come off. The letters were somehow etched into the glass, barely visible unless the light hit just right. But they were there. I finished the drive to Portland in a state of constant terror. The black truck didn't reappear, but I could feel it, watching from somewhere, waiting. That was 6 months ago. I've done maybe 20 runs since then, and every single time at some point during the drive the black truck appears. Sometimes following, sometimes leading, sometimes beside me. Never closer than a quarter mile, never further. Just always there. Other truckers have started mentioning it on the CB radio. They've seen it too. A black Peterbilt with no markings, driving the highways at night. Some say it's a ghost truck, the spirit of a driver who died and now roams the roads forever. Others think it's something else, something not human, something that uses trucks to move through our world. I don't know what it is, but I know it's chosen me for something. Every time it appears, I feel it more strongly. A pull, a connection, like it's trying to tell me something or lead me somewhere. Last week I saw where. I was driving through Nevada at 2 in the morning when the black truck appeared ahead of me. But this time, instead of just maintaining distance, it took an exit. A dirt road leading into the desert. No sign, no indication where it led. And for the first time, I wanted to follow it. Every fiber of my being said to take that exit, to find out where the black truck goes, what it wants, why it's been following me. I almost did. My hands were turning the wheel toward the exit when I forced myself to stop, to keep driving straight, to resist that pull. But it's getting harder. Each time I see the black truck, the urge to follow it gets stronger. And I know eventually I won't be able to resist. I'll take that exit. I'll follow that dirt road into the desert. And I'll find out what the black truck has been leading me toward all these months. And whatever I find, I don't think I'll be coming back. So if you're a trucker driving the western states, and you see a black Peterbilt with no markings following you or leading you, don't investigate. Don't try to make contact. And whatever you do, don't follow it when it takes an exit into nowhere. Because once it chooses you, you're marked. And eventually you'll follow. We all do. I can feel it calling me now, even as I write this. Calling me back to the highway. Back to that exit in Nevada. Back to whatever waits at the end of that desert road. And God help me, I want to go. I want to know. I want to follow that black truck wherever it leads, even if it leads to the end of everything. Story number 7. The Convoy of Dead Drivers. My name is Rachel Torres, and I've been a long-haul trucker for 13 years. I specialize in overnight runs because they're quieter and I've always preferred driving alone. But last December, I learned that some roads are never really empty. I was hauling medical supplies from Boston to Charlotte, running I-95 south through Virginia. The weather was clear, temperature around freezing, and traffic was light. It was maybe 2 in the morning when I noticed the other trucks. There were 5 of them ahead of me, all driving in a perfect line. Same spacing between each truck, same speed, all in the right lane. They were older models, the kind you don't see much anymore. 70s and 80s era semis, but in pristine condition. I've been driving this route for years and had never seen a convoy like this. Most truckers drive solo now. The old tradition of CB-organized convoys had mostly died out with the rise of GPS and cell phones. I radioed them. Breaker 19, this is Rachel Torres. You fellas heading to Charlotte? No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Curious, I decided to pass them. I moved into the left lane and started accelerating. As I came alongside the last truck in the line, I glanced over at the cab. The driver's seat was empty. I blinked, certain I'd seen wrong. But no, the cab was definitely empty. The steering wheel was turning by itself, adjusting to the curves in the road. But there was no driver. I sped up and passed the next truck. Empty cab. And the next. empty. All 5 trucks were driving themselves. My heart was hammering as I pulled ahead of the convoy and merged back into the right lane. In my mirrors, I watched those 5 trucks maintaining their perfect formation, all of them driverless. I should have called the police, reported autonomous trucks without safety observers. But something stopped me. Something about the situation felt wrong in a way that went beyond illegal self-driving vehicles. 10 minutes later, a 6th truck appeared behind me, then a 7th, then 3 more. They were joining the convoy, pulling into formation, all in a perfect line, and all with empty cabs. I counted 12 trucks now, all following me at a precise distance. The CB radio crackled to life, and I heard voices. Multiple people talking over each other, but not to me. They were having conversations among themselves. "This is Tom Jenkins. Anyone copy? Reading you, Tom. Jerry Morrison here. Where are we?" "I don't know, Jerry. Last thing I remember is driving through Richmond. Did we have an accident? I can't remember." More voices joined in. Men and women, all confused, all trying to figure out where they were and what had happened. I recognized the uncertainty in their voices, the fear. "Hello," I said into my radio. "This is Rachel Torres. Are you guys okay? Why are your cabs empty?" The voices stopped instantly. Complete silence. Then slowly one voice spoke. "Rachel Torres, you can see us? I can see your trucks, 12 of them, but there's no one driving." "We're driving," the voice said. "We're all driving. We just can't see ourselves." "What do you mean?" "Look again. Look at our trucks. Really look." I slowed down and looked in my mirror. First, I saw what I'd seen before, empty cabs. But then, as I stared, the image shifted, like my eyes were adjusting to see something that had always been there. The cabs weren't empty. They were full of people. Drivers sitting at their wheels, staring straight ahead. But they were transparent like ghosts, and they all looked terrified. "We're dead," the voice said. "We all died on this road. Different accidents, different years. But we're stuck here, driving the same route forever. And now you can see us. That means..." The voice cut off. My CB radio went silent again. I pressed the accelerator, trying to put distance between me and that convoy. But more trucks kept appearing, joining the line behind me. 20, 30, 40. All with ghost drivers I could now see. All with that same expression of terror frozen on their faces. They were trying to tell me something. All their voices came through at once, overlapping, desperate. "Turn back. Don't go to Charlotte. There's an accident ahead. You'll die if you keep going. Turn back now." I grabbed my phone and checked the traffic apps. No accidents reported on I-95. No construction, no closures. The road ahead was clear. But the ghost convoy was insistent. More trucks kept joining, 50, 60. A massive procession of the dead, all trying to warn me. Then I saw it. Ahead in the distance, barely visible in my headlights. A car had stopped in the right lane, hazards off, completely dark. I was seconds away from hitting it. I slammed on my brakes. My truck shuddered, tires screaming. I came to a stop maybe 10 feet from the stopped car. If I'd been going any faster, if I hadn't had warning, I would have plowed right into it. A family got out of the car. Parents and 2 kids, looking confused and scared. Their car had died, they explained. No power, no lights. They just stopped. I helped them get to the shoulder and called highway patrol. While we waited, I looked back at the road. The convoy of ghost trucks had vanished. The highway was empty except for my truck and the disabled car. But before they disappeared, I'd seen something. All those ghost drivers, all those dead truckers had been smiling. They'd saved me from joining them. The highway patrol arrived and took over with the family. I got back in my truck and continued south, shaking but alive. For the rest of that drive, I kept my CB radio on, and I heard them, faintly, like whispers carried on the wind. The voices of dead truckers, still driving their routes, still traveling the highways they died on. Most of them didn't know they were dead. They'd been driving so long in that state that they'd forgotten what came before. They only knew the road, the endless highway, the eternal night. But some of them, the ones who'd been there longest, they'd learned to warn the living, to prevent others from joining their convoy. That's why they'd followed me. That's why they'd shown themselves, to save my life. I made it to Charlotte safely, delivered my load. But I've never forgotten that convoy of dead drivers. And now, when I drive at night on lonely highways, I sometimes see them. Individual trucks with translucent drivers. Men and women who died behind the wheel and never stopped driving. They're everywhere, on every major highway, invisible to most people but always there. The CB radio picks up their voices sometimes. Confused conversations between drivers who don't realize they're dead. Or warnings from those who do, trying to save the living from the accidents that claimed them. Last week, I was driving through Pennsylvania when I saw him again. The first driver who'd spoken to me, Tom Jenkins. His truck pulled alongside mine, and for just a moment he looked at me. He raised his hand in a wave, a sad, gentle gesture. Then he faded away, his truck disappearing into the night. They're still out there, the convoy of dead drivers, growing larger every year as more truckers die on these highways. Someday maybe we'll all join them. All of us who drive these roads will eventually become part of that endless procession. But until then, I'll keep driving, and I'll listen to their warnings. And maybe, if I'm lucky, when my time comes, I'll be like Tom Jenkins. I'll remember who I was. I'll have enough awareness left to warn others. Because that's what truckers do. We watch out for each other, living or dead. We're all part of the same brotherhood, all traveling the same roads. And the road never really ends. It just keeps going mile after mile, night after night, forever and ever. Story number 8. The thing in the back of my trailer. My name is David Cooper, and I've been hauling freight for 19 years. In all that time, I've carried just about everything legal you can think of. Furniture, food, electronics, construction materials. I've never had a problem with cargo. Never had anything damaged, lost, or stolen. I take pride in that clean record. Last January, that record got more complicated. I picked up a load in Minneapolis that was headed to Phoenix. The paperwork said it was industrial equipment, pretty standard stuff. The loading crew at the warehouse sealed the trailer, and I hit the road without giving it much thought. The first day of driving was normal. I made it through Minnesota and into South Dakota without incident. That night, I pulled into a truck stop outside Sioux Falls to sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to a sound, a thumping noise coming from my trailer. Not loud, but distinct. Thump, pause, thump, pause, like something heavy shifting around. I'd hauled enough cargo to know that sometimes things settle during transport. Pallets shift, boxes slide. It's normal, but this sounded different. More deliberate, like something moving on its own. I got out of my sleeper and stood in the cold parking lot, listening. The thumping had stopped. Everything was silent. I walked around my trailer, checking the doors. Still sealed, no signs of tampering. I convinced myself I'd been dreaming and went back to sleep. The next night, somewhere in Wyoming, it happened again. But this time it wasn't just thumping. It was scratching. Something scratching against the inside of my trailer. Long, slow scraping sounds like nails on metal. I turned on all my lights and got out. The trailer was parked and silent. I put my ear against the door. Nothing. But the moment I climbed back into my cab, the scratching started again. I called my dispatcher. Hey, what exactly am I hauling? The paperwork just says industrial equipment. She checked the manifest. Looks like metal components? Manufactured parts for assembly? Nothing unusual. Could any of it move around? Make noise? Not unless you're driving over rough roads. Why? No reason. Just wanted to check. But I knew something was wrong. Metal components don't scratch. They don't move on their own. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I dozed off, the sounds would start. Thumping, scratching, and now something else. A dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor of my trailer. The next morning, I called the client, a company called Meridian Industrial. The person who answered said they had no record of a shipment to Phoenix. No order for industrial equipment. No delivery scheduled. Are you sure? I asked. I'm hauling your freight right now. Sir, we don't ship to Phoenix. We're a local supplier. We don't do long-distance transport. I hung up and pulled over. Something was very wrong. I was hauling cargo for a company that claimed they didn't send it. Cargo that moved and scratched and made sounds that cargo shouldn't make. I should have gone to the police right then. But I was in the middle of Wyoming, miles from anywhere, and I didn't know what I'd tell them. Officer, my trailer is making scary noises? They'd think I was crazy, so I kept driving. What else could I do? That night in Utah, the sounds got worse. Not just scratching now, banging. Something slamming against the inside of my trailer with enough force to rock the whole truck. And underneath the banging, I heard something else. Breathing. Deep, wet breathing that didn't sound human. I pulled over on the side of the highway, hands shaking, and looked at the sealed door. I could break the seal, open the trailer, see what was inside. But every instinct told me that was a bad idea. Because whatever was in there, it wanted me to open that door. I could feel it. Presence. An awareness. Something intelligent and hungry, waiting for me to make a mistake. I got back in my cab and kept driving. All through the night, that thing banged and scratched and breathed. The trailer rocked constantly. Other drivers must have noticed, but no one pulled over to check on me. Maybe they could sense something was wrong. Maybe they knew to stay away. By dawn, I was approaching Phoenix. Just a few more hours to the delivery location. I'd drop off the trailer, let whoever received it deal with whatever was inside. Not my problem. Except when I pulled up to the delivery address, there was nothing there. Just an empty lot. Abandoned. No warehouse, no office, no people. The address on my paperwork led to nothing. I sat in that empty lot as the sun rose, staring at my trailer. The sounds had stopped. Everything was quiet, but I knew it was still in there. Waiting. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. David Cooper. The voice was wrong. Distorted, like multiple voices speaking at once. You've carried our vessel well, but the journey isn't complete. Who is this? What's in my trailer? A passenger. It needed transport. You provided it. But Phoenix isn't the destination. Drive west. We'll tell you where to stop. I'm not going anywhere. I'm opening this trailer and calling the cops. If you open the door, it will be free. It will thank you for its freedom. But you won't enjoy that gratitude. Neither will anyone else in Phoenix. Keep the door sealed, David. Keep driving west, or everyone dies. The call ended. I sat there for 10 minutes trying to decide what to do. Call the police? The FBI? What would I tell them? That I had something dangerous in my trailer, something I couldn't see or identify, something that answered to voices on the phone? And what if the voice was telling the truth? What if opening that door released something terrible? I started my engine and drove west, into the desert, following the directions given to me by voice on my phone. Every half hour, my phone would ring with new coordinates, new directions. For 2 days, I drove through the Arizona desert on back roads and dirt tracks. The thing in my trailer went silent, but I could feel it. Awake, aware, patient. Finally, I reached the location they'd specified. A vast empty area in the desert, miles from any town. In the distance, I could see figures waiting. Maybe 20 people, standing in the heat, watching my truck approach. I stopped about 100 yards away. The people started walking toward me. As they got closer, I saw they weren't quite right. They moved too smoothly, too uniformly. Their faces were blank, empty. One of them approached my window. "David Cooper, you've completed your task. We'll take it from here." What is it? What have I been carrying? Something old. Something that needed to move unseen. You were perfect for this. Clean record, good reputation, no history of asking questions. They walked past my cab to the trailer. One of them broke the seal and opened the doors. I couldn't see inside from my angle, but I heard something emerge. Not footsteps, more like slithering, and that breathing so much louder now that the door was open. The blank-faced people formed a circle around my trailer. They started chanting in a language I didn't recognize. And the thing, whatever it was, responded. A sound that vibrated in my chest, that made my teeth hurt. Then they all started walking into the desert. The people and the thing they'd released. I couldn't see it clearly, just a shape that hurt to look at, something that my brain refused to process. Before they disappeared, one of the blank-faced people turned back to me. "Your service is complete. Go home. Forget this. Tell no one, or we'll need your services again." I drove back to Phoenix in a daze. My trailer was empty now, but the smell remained. Something rotten and chemical and wrong. I quit trucking the next week. Told my company I was retiring early. They asked why, and I said health reasons. That wasn't entirely a lie. I haven't slept properly since January. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that breathing, that scratching. I don't know what I carried across 3 states. I don't know who those blank-faced people were or what they did with that thing in the desert. And I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings. Unknown number. I never answer, but I listen to the voicemails. That same distorted voice, thanking me for my service, telling me I did well, promising that if they ever need transportation again, they'll call me first. And I know eventually I'll answer, not because I want to, but because whatever I carried, whatever deal I accidentally became part of, I can't escape it now. They know where I live. They know everything about me. And when they need another driver, another clean record, another truck to carry something that shouldn't exist, they'll come calling. And I'll drive. Because the alternative, becoming one of those blank-faced people, or worse, becoming like the thing in my trailer, that's not really an alternative at all. So if you're a trucker and you get offered a job with vague details, with paperwork that doesn't quite add up, with cargo that isn't properly documented, think twice. Think 3 times. Because some freight isn't cargo. Some loads are passengers. And once you agree to carry them, once you break that seal and let them into your trailer, you're part of their world forever. And you'll never be free. Finally, those were 8 true stories from long-haul truckers who experienced things that can't be explained. Things that haunt them to this day. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more scary stories. And if you're a trucker or know someone who is, maybe share this video with them. Because the road is full of mysteries, and the only way we stay safe is by warning each other. Until next time, drive safe and remember, not everything you see on the highway is what it seems.